Hello everyone and welcome to all of my corsets. All but one of these were handmade by me. Most of them are not successful, but I hope that by sharing a bit about what didn't work, it might help you on what to look out for. I will be showing you all the stays and corsets chronologically, not by order of me making them, so you'll see different levels of skill across the years. But wait then, let's rewind. I also have some stays. Stays are the equivalent-ish garment from the 18th century and previously. For more about the differences, check out a video I've linked in the description. Most of these corsets were made with the aids of books. I've gathered a lot of them over the years, but most are from Nora Wall's Corsets and Crinolines. A quick note about corsets as a sewing project. They are not easy. The reason I have so many is because all of the ones I've made were a learning experience, and only a couple I would consider successful. So don't worry if you try to make a corset and it doesn't work out. It might take you a little while, but the more you sew, the more you learn. The first item on here is one of the very first things I sewed. This is a short body from the 1630s in Corsets and Crinolines. I didn't actually adapt the pattern to my measurement at all, so it's pretty forgiving, but you can see the stitching is super sloppy and coming apart at some points. I quite like the shape it creates though, so I may attempt a new one. This is made from 2 layers of cotton muslin and a mix of plastic and spiral steel boning. These stays don't have a particular decade, but probably 1770s to 1790s. They were made using the American Duchess Simplicity pattern 8162. I really like these stays, but I made some really questionable fabric choices. This is made from a layer of thin cotton and the lightweight polyester drill, which has very little body. It was boned entirely with zip ties, a more affordable boning option, which would have worked a lot better had I used sturdier fabric. Otherwise, I think they are a little bit long on the waist for me, but I find that's true for nearly every single pattern, and it's only something I've learnt recently, so none of my older makes will have that alteration. I just want to add as well that I'm not saying these are historically accurate corsets, because a lot of my fabric choices aren't historically accurate. They were made with what I could reach and afford at the time, and that is absolutely fine. As you might have seen with most of my makes, I focus mostly on the historical silhouette or look and feel, rather than absolute historical accuracy. These stays are the 1776 stays from Corsets and Crinolines. These were made from a gorgeous Liberty cotton, which I love, and 1 layer of cotton drill, better than the previous one. It was bound with synthetic whalebone. The skirts, not called tabs I've recently learned, but they're called skirts, were bound with way too thick leather, which was hard to sew and looks kind of terrible now, but it was the only one I could find at the time. For backlacing stays, I usually lace as much as I can before putting them on, leaving really long spacing at the back, and then I can slip it on not very gracefully, and then tighten. I also didn't sew the eyelets for spiral lacing, which it should be. I made very little alterations to the pattern, which means the waistline is wrong on this one too, which pushes the arm curve way too high into my body. The front is also too wide, so the sides of the strap push into my arms, and it can be pretty uncomfortable. But the fabric is so pretty. These stays are the circa 1780 stays yet again from Corsets and Crinolines. Can you see which book I got first? This was the second thing I sewed, I think, and so they are messy and not fitted at all. I sewed up the pattern as it was, so it has a lot of fit issues. The waistline is completely wrong again. I'm a very short-waisted person, so this needs to be altered on all patterns. But I've only learned that recently, and past Cat just wanted to sew some stays. These were such an effort for me when I was learning to sew that I didn't even bother with the straps. You can see particularly in the back, the lacing panels should be parallel for a good fit, and it's really not. It's also missing spiral lacing placed eyelets. Please give a warm welcome to my Regency short stays. You've probably already seen these. I'll link the construction video up and below. These were made using the Red Threaders pattern, which was very easy to follow, provided a good fit with very little alterations. These are completely hand sewn with 2 layers of heavy linen, plastic whalebone and some cording, and they are by far one of the most comfortable items I've ever sewn. Next up, we have my 1840s corset. This was made using the 1844 pattern from Corsets and Crinolines. This is an interesting corset. I go between hating it and loving it. The outside looks really nice, so you'd think the inside must be super messy, right? Psych! It's lined and looks great. I know, right? Unreal. But I also did very little proper fitting and alterations. Can you see a pattern emerging? And so the fit isn't great. It's borderline too big for me and laces nearly shut with some space. I used 1 layer of silk, 1 layer of cotton twill and lined with lightweight linen. The illustration shows a much curvier shape than what I get. But I worked really hard on those gussets and they look pretty nice. This type of corset would traditionally have a wooden busk at the front, but at the time I didn't have anywhere to procure any, so I just added some normal steel bones. Now we have the red threaded Victorian corset. This was the first proper corset I made. The instructions were super easy to follow, but I am too short-waisted for this pattern and I didn't fix it in the mock-up stage. I will include links to all of these patterns in the description box as well. This means the corset sits a little above my waist, which makes it a bit uncomfortable after a while. This is made from one layer of twill and one layer of polyester brocade. It's a really good pattern to follow for a corset making introduction. This is my first corset with a split busk, which appeared in the mid-19th century. This corset doesn't fit me very well anymore either. You can see it from the uneven lacing at the back. We're now skipping forwards to the 1890s and my embroidered corset. I'll link the construction video above and below. This was made with the drafting instructions from Stays and Corsets. It's the 1890s wasp waist corset. This is my most recent corset make and the most successful I've made. It's solidly constructed, but not heavy, and I think the shape works really well. I have a slight issue with the bust, where I think it might be a tiny little bit too small, but you know, I can live with that. Considering the hours I spent embroidering it, I could live with a lot worse. This is made from one layer of coutil and one layer of silk. It's corded and boned with plastic whalebone. Onwards to another corset I have mixed feelings about. This also has a video on here, I'll link it. This was made from the Atelier Sylph pattern ED8. Here's a quick look at how I lace my corsets. I lace down to the middle point, which should be even with your waist, and then jump over one eyelet on the same side. These are then pulled into loops, often referred to as bunny ears lacing. This makes lacing yourself into a corset a lot easier. This corset is also missing one bone on the inside of the lacing, which definitely should be there, and would help reinforce the lacing. The construction on this is pretty good, but I'm not entirely sold on the fit. I think there are some issues, but I can't quite place what it is. The lacing is even and nice at the back. The hip is a little loose, but that's because the gussets need some padding, which I did not add, but will add in the future. I think that would definitely help with the silhouette. This one is made from 1 layer of coutil and 1 layer of vintage cotton sateen. It's also boned with synthetic whalebone. I basically don't use steel boning for my corsets at all because I find it's too restrictive. Synthetic whalebone is definitely my favourite. It's more affordable, easier to cut, easier to insert, and it just feels a lot more comfortable. And from what I understand, it is the closest we currently have to actual whalebone, so it would imitate the feel of a historical corset a lot better. But this is my favourite corset. This was commissioned from the Boudoir Key, and it fits like a glove and creates a gorgeous silhouette. It is beautifully finished on the inside. It's not a heavy corset, but it's also not my lightest, and it has some padding in the hips to create the correct silhouette. It's made, I believe, from 1 layer of coutil and 1 layer of satin. The satin is actually a peach shade that doesn't show up on camera very well. The thing I found the best about this corset is that the waist is spot on, which means that the underarm curve is correct as well, and the corset doesn't ride up when you sit down or move around because the waist is in the correct place, so it distributes the tension properly. And finally, my only modern corset. This was drafted to my measurements by my friend Helen. I'll link her down below. She's an amazing corset maker. This corset is made from a layer of heavy satin, twill, and lined with cotton. It's also got a lot of steel boning in it. This is super comfortable and creates a really flattering shape. The only thing I regret about it is making all these heavy layers and boning, as it makes it a very heavy corset, the heaviest in my collection. I really want to remake this in a lighter fabric. My idea for this corset was to wear it mostly for cosplays, so I could build the cosplays over it. However, because it is so heavy, I don't think I'll have any use for it really until I remake it in lighter fabrics, which is definitely worth it because the pattern is great. And that is it. Thank you for watching. A quick moment to thank all of my patrons for their support. Please check out my Patreon if you can. A final reminder that I'm not a professional corset maker. I am a self-taught seamstress who really enjoys making corsets, but I am in no position to give professional advice. As I hope I've shown, corset making is a long learning process with satisfying results at the end. Corsets are a tricky subject because they aren't the most beginner-friendly projects, but they're also essential for every single historical costume you make. So maybe you'll want to handle it like I did, where you just jump in the deep end and make corset after corset until you figure out what works. Either way, I know I have a lot of corsets in my future, and I hope to share them with you.